welcome to Good Grief, the podcast dedicated to demystifying and destigmatizing grief with compassion and humor. I'm Nikki. I'm an end-of-life doula and a grief coach in Columbus, Ohio. And today we're going to talk about the fear of forgetting. Before we dive in, it is an absolutely gorgeous day at the end of April. As I'm recording this, God only knows when I'll release it, but it's such a beautiful day. I've got the windows open, closed in my office here, but they're open around the house. You might hear some little birdies tweeting. I thought about running around closing all the windows, but hey, might make a nice little background for this. Okay. So, as I said, we are going to be talking about the fear of forgetting. This is something that's brought up in and around grief support groups a lot of times for folks that are mourning or grieving somebody who, that's another episode we'll get into on the difference between mourning and grieving if I haven't already done that and released it. But people in the process of grieving their loved one's loss will have moments where they fear forgetting their loved one. And I hear that a lot. You'll hear things like, I'm starting to forget the sound of her voice. I'm starting to forget his laugh. I'm starting to forget how she smelled, and, you know, things like that. And we all have those panic moments of, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting these details about them, but it's really more of a broader scope of, I'm afraid I'm going to forget this person, right? And let's just say, we're not going to forget these people. I'm not going to ever forget my brother. And it's been 7 years since he's passed, and I can still hear his voice as clear as if he called me yesterday in my head. I'm kicking myself for deleting the last voicemail he left me, but he didn't call me that frequently. He usually texted me. And unfortunately, those text messages are long gone too. But I kind of wish I would have kept the voicemail, but, you know, obviously I didn't know he was going to pass away. And my husband holds on to a couple voicemails his mom left before she passed away. And it's a beautiful thing that he likes to go listen to them from time to time. But for a while, when he had to switch phones, he was just petrified of losing those voicemails because he didn't want to forget the sound of her voice. And that is beautiful and makes a heck of a lot of sense to me. So yeah, there tends to be an unspoken fear of forgetting the people that we've lost. And again, I'll say it, you're not going to forget these people. And okay, you might start to lose some small details, like how they smelled when they got out of the shower, or, you know, the way they sneezed, you know, the silly little things like that. But I guarantee if it's something unique, you're never going to forget it. Something beautiful I wanted to share. I recently read an amazing book called Bearing the Unbearable by Dr. Joanne Cacciatore. I highly recommend this book. It's a really, really amazing read. It's mostly anecdotes of people she's met and dealt with in her work, but also her own grief when she lost her very young child. And what an awful grief that was. There's a lot of things we can do to hold on to our memories, right? And even things we can do after someone is gone. Someone who may have, you know, been taken from you suddenly. Someone who may have died unexpectedly. If we have the opportunity to work with somebody who we know will be passing away, who's battling a terminal illness or aging, getting, you know, advanced in years, you can have conversations with them on, and this is part of what I do as an end-of-life doula as well, as I work with the dying person themselves, as far as what kind of legacy, be it physical or, you know, spiritual, or what kind of legacy they want to leave behind, or how they want to be remembered by their loved ones. And then we can work together on finding something, like I said, either physical they can make to leave behind, or poems they can write, you know, just anything. Sky's the limit as to how they would like to be remembered and what of their life they want to pass on to those around them. But there are also things that you can do after somebody has gone to continue to remember them, or to have something to hold on to, so that you don't, quote unquote, forget them, or if you want to hold on to memories. So in the book I was talking about, there was a woman who had a 6-month-old baby who died from SIDS. And after, obviously it was completely devastating to her, and her grief was just unbearable most days. And it got to a point after time where she felt like she wasn't being supported in her grief anymore, and that people around her weren't necessarily saying things like, how are you not over this by now? But not understanding why she was still so buried in her grief. We say it all the time, right, folks? Your grief is your own, and it has no time limit. Your grief is always there, and it's your own. Nobody else can tell you how to grieve or how long to grieve. I'll just keep hammering that home as long as I can. But 10 years after her child passed, she went to, Dr. Cacciatore. I'm sorry, she goes by JoJo, and was just explaining this. Like, I don't understand. People don't know why I'm grieving. Maybe I don't know why I'm grieving. And she even got to the point where she didn't feel like she could ever talk about the baby she lost. And she needed to talk about it. She needed to mourn outwardly, but she felt like she wasn't being well received with that. So they came up with an idea to make a box, and they called it Chance's box because the child's name was Chance. And she sent out an email to all her friends and family and asked them to write down physically or send her memories they had of Chance in the short time they were alive, or stories about her pregnancy or anything, surrounding this baby. And, beautifully they did. They sent her so many lovely stories, and she put them all on cards and put them in this box. So when she had those days where everything felt unbearable, or she was worried about, forgetting this beautiful life that was with her for such a short time, she could pull out that box and read these stories. So that's just a beautiful way to not only remember somebody on your own, but to pick up on other people's memories of someone who's been lost. Another amazing thing I've somewhat recently learned about, I'd heard of this organization before, but it was also referenced in this book by Dr. Joanne Cacciatore, JoJo, as she prefers. There is an organization called the MISS Foundation, MISS Foundation, which stands for Mothers in Sympathy and Support. So she started this organization after she lost her child, and they provide support and resources for mothers who have lost their children, trainings, advocacy, things like that. But within this, she started this beautiful thing called the Kindness Project. And it's basically a random act of kindness project. And you can either print or order these cards that basically just say, this is a random act of kindness done in loving memory of, there's a blank line, and at the bottom is Miss Foundation and their website. And she shared a couple stories of people who have done these random acts of kindness for people they have lost. And this started basically the first Christmas after she lost her child. And she went to a toy store, and she was obviously incredibly overwhelmed and upset because she had just lost her child, but she has other children, and she was shopping for toys, and she was just so overwhelmed. But she started just buying a bunch of random toys with random children that she only marginally was imagining in her head. And she just took everything to the register, paid for them, went home and wrapped everything super carefully and put them in a big white garbage bag. She didn't really have a plan on what to do with the toys, so she really just kind of drove around and went to a children's hospital, but she just ended up randomly outside of a Head Start program, one of those Head Start schools for young children, and she just couldn't bear holding this anymore. So she took the gifts inside, asked to see the director, and just said, here, just give these to your kids. And of course they were overwhelmed with, gratitude and wanted to thank her. And she didn't want to be thanked. She didn't want to be recognized. She didn't even want to leave her name. She just left the gifts, and they said, and it was Christmas Eve, by the way. They said, we actually have children here today for parents that are stuck at work, and just the right amount of children we have as amount of gifts that she brought. And it was just one of those miracle coincidences. She just sat in her car after she dropped those off and just sobbed. She had such a beautiful experience with that. It left such an impact on her that she was able to help somebody else in memory of her daughter, that she decided every year she would go out and try to do something similar. Not necessarily just buying toys. There was another time she was at a shoe store and she overheard parents a couple aisles over talking about which one of their four or five children was going to get new shoes for back to school because they couldn't afford shoes for all of the kids. So she quietly walked up and found the manager and gave him a fair amount of money and said, there's a family back there. I want you to, get as many gift cards as this money will get and go give them to that family so that they can get shoes for all their kids. And again, he tried to get her name, but she just left the store. She didn't want to be recognized for any of this, but she thought that was a gift from her daughter for these people. And that was the birth of the Kindness Project, which you can, if you go to missfoundation.org, they have a whole page on the Kindness Project. So you can order those cards if you ever want to do that, which I think is just such an amazing thing. Some people just take a $20 bill, wrap it around one of these cards, and just leaves them at a bus stop. Things like that. But I think the most beautiful story I heard, I'm going to try not to cry, but there was a woman at a restaurant who was by herself, and she had had a stillborn child. She, carried to full term and had her child, and her child was not alive. And again, this was obviously very devastating to her. And it wasn't too much after this had happened. She went to a restaurant just to get herself some lunch, and she sat down and a whole group of people came into the table next to her, and it was a baby shower. And obviously she was still very much hurting and didn't know how to react. And she just knew, I can't sit here and watch this glowing, expectant mother unwrap all these gifts when I have lost my own child. And she was angry. There was a part of her that was really angry. This woman gets to have all this, and I lost this. But instead of being angry or lashing out or causing a scene or anything, she quietly got up, went to the maitre d' stand, and said, I would like to pay for everybody's lunch at that table for that bridal shower. Oh God, I'm starting to cry. I'm sorry, I said bridal shower. I meant baby shower. And the maitre d' said, wonderful, we'll take that. And she said, she just left a card that was one of the Kindness Project cards that said it was in loving memory of her. And I apologize, I can't remember the child's name, but she put the child's name in. Apparently, the expectant mother got the card and saw that everything was paid for and was just obviously blown away and very grateful that somebody offered to pay for her and all of her friends lunch that day for her baby shower. And Googled or went to that website and, saw what it was about and sent them a message and said, obviously this woman didn't want to be known, and I don't need to know who she is, but just if you know who this person was, please tell her that she made such a beautiful impact, and I would like to order a stack of cards, for she had lost somebody in her life, not one of her children, but she wanted to order some cards too, and she said she would pay it forward and try to support women who've lost their children too, which was just such a beautiful story. And I've said a million times how I don't have children and I don't know what it's like to lose a child, but I honestly, in my mind, can't fathom a deeper hurt. I can't fathom a worse pain than losing a child. So the fact that there are so many women out there who have not experienced that are willing to support other women that have, it's always a beautiful, beautiful thing to me. I got a little emotional there. Whew. Anyway, so I shared some rather emotional stories there, but there's some happy, beautiful things. I've seen so many amazing legacy projects in my studies in becoming an end-of-life doula of some really cool things people have come up with. There was a woman who passed away who was a synchronized swimmer, and all of her friends got together and hand-sewed bathing suits for them and all the friends and family of this woman who passed away. And all ages, sizes, genders, whatever, got these matching bathing suits and caps, and they went to a fountain in the middle of this park and basically did a flash mob synchronized dance. It wasn't really a swim because they were just in a pond, but they were in the water doing a synchronized dance. And it was just a beautiful tribute to her. And they decided to continue to do that once a year. And I just thought that was so fun and just such a beautiful way to remember her. So there's obviously a million ways. I could do a full episode just on ideas of ways you can remember somebody. But if you've lost somebody recently, or someone close to you is actively dying and you know they're going to be gone soon, just know that you probably will have those moments of panic of, I'm forgetting them, or I'm going to forget them. So the best thing you can do to prepare yourself for that is to practice remembering them. Sit down and write out things about them you want to remember. Really just close your eyes and smell that smell that they have. If it's a perfume they wear, or just everybody has their own scent. Just smell that smell in your head and quiet yourself and hear their voice in your head. So it's training, it's muscle memory. Just keep practicing that. So when the time comes that you do have that moment of, oh God, I'm forgetting them, sit down, close your eyes, take some deep breaths, and go through those steps again. Smell that smell, hear that voice, whatever it is you need to do to remember. Just practice remembering. It's something you can practice just like you would practice playing an instrument. I promise you won't forget the people you love. You won't. You love them because you love them. They're a huge part of your life, right? You won't forget them. And if maybe one day you can't quite remember what their laugh sounded like, it doesn't mean you forgot them, and it does not mean you love them any less. You still love them. Their memory is still there, and they're still with you in your heart. So always remember that. And as always, your grief is your own. Okay? Whew. Let's all take a deep breath together. Okay. That was kind of an emotional one there. Even I choked up a few times. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please subscribe, tell your friends and family about how awesome I am and this podcast is. And don't forget, you can also find me on Patreon at patreon.com/Nikki the Death Doula. And as always, my Patreon funds go directly to me providing pro bono work to people that cannot afford my services. It is not going to my bourbon fund, I promise. And as always, you can find me on my website at nikkithedeathdoula.com. Feel free to shoot me a message. Tell me you think my podcast is great, or you think I should shut up and never do this again. Spoiler, I'm going to keep doing it. But thank you so much. Just always remember, your grief is yours. Your feelings are valid. And there's no timeline on your grief. Thank you. Good Grief was brought to you by me. You can find me online at nikkithedeathdoula.com. Today's episode was produced by me. Research and scripts written by me. Your host is me. Editing and sound design also me. Music is not me. Music is Cheery Monday by Kevin MacLeod. License information can be found at filmmusic.io/standard-license. Special thank you to my best friend and husband for constantly reassuring me that I don't suck.